Okay, there we go. So yeah, so this is the second weekend on what is it? How to live happily as a couple. This topic, which which I ordinarily wouldn't choose as a topic, but Shanti asked me to review some of what Rinpoche, Amazon Rinpoche taught on in Singapore while I was there in August. Um, so Rinpoche had been, I don't know, I think he'd been asked by some of the members of the center there kind of how to live happily as a couple, and somehow Rinpoche took to the topic and spent quite a lot of time, several sessions, on talking about that. Went through some very nice, kind of essential Dharma advice. So Shanti asked me to speak about some of what Rinpoche taught about in Singapore. So I chose this kind of set of teachings that Rinpoche gave, and went through some of the videos and transcripts and noted down the main points and then looked up some advice like on YouTube from like TED Talks and stuff from psychologists, psychologists and researchers in mental health to see what was some of modern advice in the mental health field about how to live happily as a couple, and kind of blended the two together. So we spent two sessions on this about a month ago, and this will be the second two sessions. And I think we can finish today and tomorrow. So let's begin with just spending a little time focusing our attention and then generating the mind of refuge and generating a positive motivation. Yeah, and then I'll present some points, talk about some points, and then we can do a little bit more meditation and then dedicate. So get comfortable in your meditation posture first. Your legs crossed and seated upright. Your shoulders broad, open. Take a few deep breaths. I'll cough because I have a little phlegm in my lungs from a cold. Can you hear me, Shanti? Does this sound good enough? Okay, good. Yeah, that'd be great. So take a few deep breaths and gradually turn your attention inwards and focus on an object of placement meditation, either just the sensations of breathing, the inhalation and exhalation of your breath, or on the nature of your mind, or on a visualized object like visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha or whatever. Focus your mind on some object of attention for, I don't know, let's say 2 or 3 minutes. Just try to practice single pointed concentration. So determine what object you're going to focus on, and then think to yourself, now I'll focus on this object as to the best of my ability for say 2 or 3 minutes, and then try to just hold your attention focused on one object. And inevitably, because we have so much discursive thought, your attention will wander off and you'll start thinking about something else. But as soon as you can, try to catch your mind wandering off to think about something else, and then let those thoughts go. Think, I can deal with that later after the meditation, after the session, and then bring your attention back to your object of meditation and try to hold your attention there as well as you can, again, and try to sustain an unbroken continuity of awareness of your object of meditation. Mm.
So then first we'll generate a positive motivation. So to do that, it's very helpful to think of all other sentient beings. So we can visualize other sentient beings in three different groups, or think of them. So we think of ourselves being surrounded by all sentient beings. And we can divide them into three groups. Into first of all, those whom we're closer to, where we naturally have a positive attitude towards, like our friends and family. And then those whom we tend to dislike and have aversion towards, or whom, yeah, we feel disturbed by. So we can label as antagonists. And then all the other sentient beings whom we have a neutral attitude towards, neither liking or disliking, especially. So the first group, the friends and family, we imagine on either side of us and behind us. So we can imagine our mother of this life and all of our female friends and family to our left. So just briefly imagine that, your mother of this life at your immediate left, and then your other, your grandmothers, your aunts, female cousins, sisters, female friends, and so forth, all to your left and behind you. Imagine they're here with you, meditating. And remember your interconnection with them, how they depend upon you, you depend upon them. And then to your immediate right, imagine your father of this life, and then your grandfathers, uncles, brothers, male friends, and family to your right and behind you. Again, feel how you're connected with them. Could be also those who are living, those who have passed away, those who are dead as well. And then imagine directly in front of you, a few meters away, those whom you're most prone to become angry or irritated with. Imagine them, whom you tend to dislike. Imagine them facing towards you. And remember that the reason for visualizing them in front, facing towards us, is because we have to make special effort to generate a positive attitude towards them, to refrain from becoming angry and generate in its place loving kindness and compassion towards them.
And then imagine all the other sentient beings who are human beings or animals or so forth. Imagine them, hungry ghosts, devas. Imagine them all in human form, filling all of space, filling all the universe around you. And remember how they experience all different forms of suffering, countless forms of suffering, from life to life, taking rebirth, living, dying, taking rebirth again and again. And how you've been what is it, related to them, interrelated with them, as family, as friends, as strangers, from life to life, with all these sentient beings. And how you have the same nature, having a pure a mind, a mind stream that continues from life to life, and which is by nature pure of or by its own entity, it's by nature free of any disturbance, and has the potential for perfect peace and happiness. So now in the prayer book, yeah, I'll share my screen on here. In the prayer book on page 111, I need the screen sharing, Shanti. We need, you can make me the co-host and then I'll have
Sure.
screen sharing, I think, or just, I don't know, enable screen sharing.
Yes,
On, we'll read the four immeasurables. There we go. Great. Thank you, Shanti.
welcome.
So the version on the Zoom room is a little bit different, but I'll read the one in the prayer book here in Bangalore at Choe Khor Sum Ling. So we'll just read the four immeasurable thoughts once and then spend a little time trying to generate especially loving kindness and compassion. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity, free from hatred and attachment, not holding some close and others distant. May they abide in equanimity. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings had happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and its cause. I myself will cause them to have these. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So that's the verse on loving kindness or love, wishing for all sentient beings to have happiness, thinking, may they actually have happiness. May I myself cause them to have every happiness and the causes of happiness. And then please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be, and then on page 112 at the top, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from suffering and its causes. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So this is the verse on compassion, wishing that all, thinking how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering. Really, if you think about it, how incredible that would be if no sentient being had any suffering whatsoever. Then may that actually come to be. May they be free from suffering. And then may I myself cause them, or not only may I myself will cause them to be free from suffering and its causes. And then please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So this is immeasurable compassion. And then the last verse, immeasurable joy. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never separated from the happiness of higher rebirth and liberation and full enlightenment. Also there. May they never be separated from these. I myself will cause them to never to be separated from these. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So spend a few moments meditating on those thoughts: immeasurable equanimity, immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, and then the last one is called immeasurable joy. And try to use that as a reason for engaging in this session in order to be able to, in short, free all sentient beings from every form of suffering, and establish all sentient beings in the peerless, every form of happiness up to full enlightenment. So try to generate those attitudes for a few moments. So then especially try to generate a bodhicitta motivation for this session. This session on how to live happily as a couple by thinking, in order to free all sentient beings from every form of suffering, I myself must quickly become fully enlightened. Therefore, I'll engage in this session. And then if you like, visualize Shakyamuni Buddha, the field of refuge in the space before you, seated on a golden throne supported by 4 white snow lions. Upon that is a fully open lotus blossom. Upon that, a golden disk of light, sun disk and a moon disk. So these representing renunciation, wisdom, realizing emptiness, and bodhicitta, the 3 principal aspects of the path. Then upon that sits Shakyamuni Buddha, wearing the robes of a fully ordained monk. Light rays radiating out from every pore of his body, and he looks affectionately upon you and every sentient being. Then on a low text in front of him is a Dharma, is a you can say 1 volume of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras representing the Dharma jewel. And then you can represent either Shakyamuni Buddha himself represents the Sangha jewel, or you can represent him surrounded by other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and great Buddhist masters and your own teachers. So briefly visualize the field of refuge. And then we can recite the Refugee Bodhicitta prayer on page 11. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly by my practice of giving and other perfections, or here we say listening to teachings, right? Listening and other perfections. I say explaining, the audience says listening. By my practice of explaining and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of listening and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of explaining and other perfections, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, so my cursor working. Yeah. So this session on how to live happily as a couple. I don't see any couples here today, though. It's all singles. It's like a singles night.
Oh, my wife's here.
But huh?
My wife's here.
Is she?
sitting on
Okay.
the. Yeah, she's listening.
Oh, is she? Oh, that's great.
Yeah, she's right there. Say hi. Hello.
Oh, you have to point the camera down a little bit, Madhav. I couldn't see.
Oh.
Could you see her hair? Oh, hi. Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anyway, couples are so important because they're really kind of the basis of human society, in a way. All of us are born from a couple, right? Nobody is just born from one parent. It takes two parents to make a child. So, from human life, from generation to generation, it's kind of the fundamental building block of society in a way. As of course, individuals are important, but if everybody was completely single, just living in isolation on their own without ever engaging in a relationship, especially in a romantic relationship with someone else, then we would all die out after one generation in one lifetime. So it's independence upon couples that we have families, children, and couples raise children, I think we look at our own experience as adults. Ooh, is it Diwali? Okay. Can we shut the windows so that there's not so much noise? I'm blowing my nose. Yeah. Some boys were playing with firecrackers on my walk here to the center tonight. I thought, oh, maybe it's Diwali. A dangerous time of year on the streets of India. Yeah, so, well, I was saying, so as adults, we can see that so much of our emotional patterns, our patterns of behavior, patterns of, especially emotionally reacting to things, our judgments, to what things we think are good or bad, are so much modeled after our parents, either affected by our parents. Either we, idolize and we kind of think similarly to, or we revolted and think totally opposite to them because we think they're totally wrong or something. But so much of our, our personality, our character, the way we develop as a person is affected by, the early impressions we get and influence we get from our parents as a very young child. And I think, as a young child, we don't realize, so much, but the way our parents are as people is largely shaped by how, how they experience their relationship with their partner, well, whether it's, our father and our mother. You know, it's only kind of as we become an adult that we realize, you know, our parents are actually individual separate people who met one another and then decided to live together, and then realized how difficult that is, and then, you know, kind of, well, not well, maybe I think for most people it's quite difficult to live, you know, in a long-term relationship with another person. Of course, there's I mean, even if it's easy, there are challenges that arise, and how much they I don't know. What do you say? They sacrifice, not quite the word, but how they compromise in order to be in the relationship. You know, how they compromise different aspects of their own individual sort of likes and dislikes, and dispositions in order to yeah, stay in a relationship with our other parent, or, you know, or not, whatever. But yeah, I mean, the relationship, anyway, my point here is that the how a couple, two people in an intimate relationship, how they get along with each other or don't, you know, how they relate to each other, it has a very strong impact, you know, powerful impact in society. I think more so, in many ways, more so than an individual person. You know, you think about your own extended family. We think about our own extended families, and it's like, you know, when we have big family gatherings, big family gatherings, like at weddings or funerals, then it's really, you know, the real kind of the nodes of focus, the kind of the main entities there are the different couples, you know, whether it's our grandparents as a couple or our aunts and uncles, the ones that are couples. The ones who are singles are always kind of like the outliers, you know, they're kind of like the free ions, like drifting around. But the ones who are the couples are like, you know, I don't know, the nucleus of the atoms, or the protons, like the big entities kind of anchoring the whole thing down. Not that there's something wrong with, you know, singles, or that's, I mean, of course it's fine to live as a single. I mean, speaking as a monk, I have to say that, of course, I would say that. I mean, the Buddha instructed all of his ordained followers to be single, right? Unlike, you know, unlike in other religions like Islam or Judaism, where the leaders of the religion should be actually married. But yeah. And also, so for one reason, because couples become parents, and then, you know, if they have a very wholesome, positive, you know, supportive, mutually respectful, peaceful, happy relationship, then that affects their children, and their children are much more likely to become very well developed, you know, emotionally stable, wise, you know, kind-hearted people, and make a very positive contribution to society, right? Whereas if the couple, they themselves are they don't get along, they argue all the time, they're depressed, you know, angry, resentful, bitter, you know, unhappy, then that affects the children. No, the children then also feel emotionally kind of vulnerable, ill at ease, probably unhappy, maybe not. I mean, unhappy people tend to be more selfish and not be able to give as much in caring about others. So I think you can say, you know, parents who are in a very unhappy relationship with each other, they don't have as much space and energy and attention to give to their children, and so the children feel like not, you know, not cared for, not supported, and so it's much more difficult for the children to grow up as kind of happy, wholesome, mature individuals, and so it weakens society as a whole. Yeah, so I don't know, see if that's true or not, but it's very important, I think, for couples to have, you know, if you know, a couple has a very good relationship, and then they have children, those children, you know, they modeling their behavior on their parents' behavior, they naturally kind of can see how to have a wholesome relationship with their own partners as they become adults, and then they have children, And then, you can end up having a whole, kind of extended family that's where most of the people are quite, happy and have good lives. And then, when people are happy, they tend to act morally, act ethically, live their lives in a way that they don't harm others, and they try to benefit them instead. When people are unhappy, and when people are unhappy, then they become, resentful, they self-pitying, and kind of can become desperate. And then that's when they harm others. I mean, think that if that's true in relation to your own behavior, no? Think, if we think about times when we've really harmed others, was it a time when we felt good and cared for and happy? Or was it a time when we felt like lonely and neglected and miserable? You know? It's usually when we feel like kind of down and out and, alone and unhappy that we harm other people. I mean, you look at, yeah, anyway, I shouldn't digress too much or I won't finish the topic of couples tonight. I guess that wouldn't be the end of the world either, would it? Anyway, so I think it's quite important to, I guess I'm kind of giving it as advice to myself as a Buddhist teacher, as someone who usually doesn't usually think about, giving advice to couples because it's just not my thing for the last 20 years since I've been ordained. So I don't think of it so much. But I think that's kind of an oversight because for most people, it's one of the most central things in their lives is finding a suitable partner and then trying to make a relationship work, from year to year. And that's a very important part of people's lives. And if it goes well, like I'm saying, it can be very, very beneficial for many people, not only, not their immediate family, their children, think how much suffering, even their parents, like think a set of parents when they see their child get in a relationship and the relationship not go well, then how much the parents suffer to see their own children in really miserable marriage or abusive marriages, where, or where in a marriage where then the children are also so neglected and so harmed by seeing their parents fight or custody battles and all those kind of things. So so wholesome relationship in a couple can be so beneficial for many people, and if it doesn't go well, if it's destructive, it can be so harmful for many people. So it's really important to think about. So let's look at some of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's advice for couples. Then I'll jump to my outline here. So last time we got up to last weekend I was here. We talked about combining some strategies from modern psychology and Buddhist teachings. And especially, there's this one very good researcher in kind of psychology, Joanna Davila, who says there's three main kind of, her points are very, very similar to Buddhist teachings. She says there's three main kinds of skills that a person needs to have a kind of good romantic relationships. The first is insight, where they have insight into what their needs and the needs of another person, the needs of the other person in the couple. They think about what brings them happiness, what brings them pleasure, what brings them peace of mind, and their other person, and so having that kind of wisdom with regard to themselves, they can also have that understanding with regard to another person. And then they have mutuality, is what she calls, which means it's like the willingness to compromise, willingness to be able to recognize one's own needs and be able to voice those, express those clearly to one's partner, and then also recognize the needs of one's partner and be willing to compromise and give one's partner the support and space to be able to do the things in life and act in the different ways that they want, that they feel comfortable and they feel happy with. So being being able to find kind of a middle ground between one's own needs and the needs of one's partner is called mutuality. And then emotional regulation is basically like not overreacting about things, not not becoming, not being so dramatic. And one little thing one's partner does that upsets oneself, not blowing that out of proportion and becoming totally angry or resentful or totally unhappy about that, but trying to see the little ups and downs in the big picture and have a kind of equilibrium of emotional balance. So in regulating one's emotions, especially basically that one doesn't overreact to things. One keeps a kind of a broad perspective and kind of has the ability to step back and just stay calm basically in dealing with everything that happens, especially the difficult things, right? So those are the three skills she says we need: insight, mutuality, emotional regulation. And then this other common strategy, especially in cognitive behavioral psychology and psychology in general, is called the rupture and repair strategies, where we have the ability to apologize, the ability to forgive, the ability to teach, and the ability to learn. And so we're going to go over all those in relation to compassion. So then the Lama Zopa Rinpoche's main points were, first of all, real happiness comes from having a good heart. So I spoke a lot about that, I think, in the first session. The importance of just generally practicing kindness, having a good heart, being kind, and not just doing that like when you feel like it, but especially when you don't feel like it, and by making a deliberate practice of being kind-hearted and realizing how important that is, for you, from other people, when other people are kind to you, how helpful that is, and thereby making a habit of oneself being kind to others, smiling, having even, as Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, when you walk down the street, don't show a grumpy face, just have a pleasant face, smile at people so that they feel good, thinking that you want other people to be happy. And then, being patient, being kind to people. And how, unkindness really comes from selfishness. So being altruistic, caring more about others than oneself. And then Rinpoche talks about being mindful that happiness comes from your mind. Where does happiness come from? Where does one's own happiness? So this is what we meditated on in the second session also, like looking at what is happiness? What are different kinds of happiness that I experience? And how do those arise? Where is that happiness that I experience? Is it something outside? Is it in a bottle or a package? Or is it, a place that I can go to? Of course, there are places we can go to and feel happy, but it's not like that place is like happy and everybody that comes there goes happy. I mean, sure, there's people there that also feel miserable in the same place, right? So the happiness is in the mind, recognizing that happiness is a state of mind. Something arises in our mind. So to achieve happiness, we have to focus on our mind and create the causes again and again of developing happiness in our minds, right? And then Rinpoche's next point was compassion. So that's where that's where we'll start today, talking about compassion. So the importance of compassion. Let's just think in a general way, in relation to couples. How is compassion important, in a relationship? So here, I mean, also all this advice, it's, if you think, well, I don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife or whatever, so this is not relevant to me. Well, that's not the case. All this advice is very generalizable, it's important for, someone who's in a relationship with someone in relation to their partner, but it's also important in all of our relationships, whether it be with our parents, with our friends, with our neighbors, with our, co-workers, whoever. We can apply all this advice in any relationship with others and just in our own minds. I'm gonna have a sip of tea because I have a little phlegm. Okay, so first of all, just thinking about, in general, think about in a couple, in a relationship with a partner, why is compassion important? One way compassion is important is because in an intimate relationship with another person, we really have a responsibility to the other person to care for them, right? And so if we're not, if we're not compassionate towards them, then we can easily not notice when they're suffering, overlooking overlooking a time when they might feel sick, or they might be feeling vulnerable, or they might just be feeling unhappy and down. Sometimes, when we're, think about yourself, when we ourselves are feeling a little sick, or vulnerable, or unhappy, we tend to hide that from other people, because it's something, we tend to think there's something wrong with us if we feel those ways, or we don't want to be the object of other people's pity. If we're sick and we can hide it from others, because as soon as, think when you go to meet other people, like friends or family or something, as soon as they know you're sick, then everybody starts asking, oh, what happened? What's wrong with you? How are you treating yourself? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And it's just kind of a pain, right?
So much fuss.
Yeah, it's so much fuss. You'd rather just like not have it, right? So I think, and also if we're feeling unhappy, then we tend to feel like, people will be like, oh, well, what's wrong? What's wrong with you that you're not happy? And it also, that's not helpful, right? So, and if we're feeling vulnerable, sometimes it's like because we feel like we're just not good, we're not good enough, we're not successful, we're not intelligent enough, we haven't worked hard enough, we're not lucky. And so those are all kind of things we try to hide. When we feel very happy, we want everybody to know about it. When we feel unhappy, we just kind of like to smile and nobody really knows about it, right? So I see some comment in the chat. Oh yes, I can email you the outline. Yes, I will. Thank you for the reminder. But in a couple, it's our responsibility to really be sensitive to our partner, right? And because we live with them day in and day out, and we're their main support, we're the main support for each other. So if we're not compassionate, compassionate meaning we really empathize with how they feel, and when we see them suffer, we want to help, we want to free them from suffering in whatever, and we want to help them be free from suffering in whatever way we can. So if we have that attitude, then naturally we become more sensitive to them. We become more aware of, how they seem to be feeling today, each day, each hour of each day. And we naturally can pick up on it. Then we can pick up when maybe things are not going so well for them. And we can just gently kind of give them opportunities, ask them about, what's going on, and give them opportunity to kind of share their burden with us. And then we can help them problem solve and see, what can we do to help sort of make this easier, help find a solution to whatever is bothering them. So, but it all starts with having just the wish to benefit, the wish to free another person from suffering, the wish to benefit them. Just in our own mind, sometimes, when we meditate, we think, may all sentient beings be free from suffering, may all sentient beings be, have every happimess. It can seem like a very abstract, unrealistic, impractical, and totally impotent kind of thing, right? Like I'm just sitting here meditating, and outside the world is like, going crazy, and what's the point? It can seem like that. But if we look, and if we think on the terms of the whole scale of the whole world, like me here meditating, me sitting here meditating on the whole world, like, there's starvation in Africa and Ebola somewhere else, and then, the I don't know, inflation all over the place, and, people's, I don't know, their incomes going down, and the cost of living going up, and the war in Ukraine, and global pollution, and everything. What's the point of me here sitting here meditating? But then when you think in terms of like, but the whole world is made up, just like just like, all the mountains and the oceans, when we study like the structure of one atom, it can be like, well, how is that related to, the mountains and the oceans and the deserts and, the whole planet. But all of those are made up of atoms. Everything physical is made up of these little tiny, structures, atoms and subatomic particles. So understanding those small units, then only in dependence upon that can we really understand the whole. The whole is made up of small units. So similarly, the whole world is made up of, and all the problems and all the conflict, all the suffering in the world between human beings, between humans and animals, and between creatures is based upon relationships between individuals. And it's really based upon what happens in one individual's mind and how, and when they meet another individual, how those two like relate, how they interact with each other, like magnets, whether they attract or whether they repel each other, whether they get along or whether they don't. No, so all the the wars in the world start with individual conflicts. Two people, or two groups of people, whatever. So, so when you think about generating compassion, when we as an individual generate, one moment of compassion, that makes, in that moment, our mind becomes more soft. Our mind becomes more considerate. Our mind becomes more empathetic. Our mind becomes more sensitive to another person. And then in the way we relate to one other person in one moment, we relate better. We can more understand, we can more easily come into tune into how they're feeling, empathize with, what's going on with them, and want to help rather than want to harm, or rather than not. Whereas the opposite, if we don't practice, compassion in a relationship, and so you can see, whereas compassion for another person, it's our attention is focused outward towards the other person. Whereas when we feel sorry for ourselves, when we feel down, when we feel upset, when we feel like strong desire, our attention is more focused inwards on I. The more our attention is focused inwards, the less our attention is focused outwards towards another person. And so the less sensitive we are to what's going on with the other person. And so the more insensitive we are. And so the more like we're likely to just not notice when they're having a hard time or something's not going well. And then we can't be of any support. And then if we're in a relationship with another person and they feel like we're not sensitive to what's going on with them, and thereby we don't support them, then they're going to feel like, what's the point of me being in a relationship with this person? If this person who has committed to a relationship with me, but they don't even notice me, they don't even take the time and energy to try to understand me, then they're going to feel hurt by that, just like we would. When we feel down, and if we're in a relationship with a partner and that partner doesn't seem to notice, or if they notice, they don't seem to care, then it's very hurtful, and it's not fair, right? So it's incredibly important in the context of a couple that we practice compassion. It's the same with parents and children, or parents in relation to children, children in relation to parents, in relation to friends. Okay, so then just that general point made, it's taking a long time. My God, we're almost done with 1 hour. Okay, I don't think we're going to finish this weekend. But now this beautiful quote that Rinpoche gave from a sutra. Rinpoche often gives this quote whenever he talks about compassion. It's from the Compendium of Teachings Sutra. You probably heard it before. It says, Bhagawan, the Bhagawan is the Buddha. Bhagawan, bodhisattvas should not learn many teachings. Surprising, isn't it? Bodhisattvas should not learn many teachings. You think, well, the Mahayana is all about like teaching, studying, especially the Gelupas. We study all these texts. It's like, sometimes you feel like you can never learn everything the Buddha taught. There's so much. The Kangyur is 108 volumes. The Tengyur is like 216 volumes or something. It's like, but then here it says, Bodhisattvas should not learn many teachings. I feel, when I hear that, I feel, okay, relief. Oh, good. I don't have to learn everything. Bodhisattvas should not learn many teachings. Bhagawan, if bodhisattvas grasp and know one teaching, just one, they will have all of the Buddha's teachings in the palm of their hand. And bodhisattvas just know one teaching. They'll have all of the Buddhist teachings in the palm of their hand. It's like magic. How could that be? That if you just know one essential teaching, you could know all of the Buddhist teachings. That all of the Buddhist teachings could be in your palm, like they're just ready to be used. What is this one teaching? It is great compassion. It says, so this one teaching, it's like the essential teaching of the Buddha, of all the Buddhist teachings, the most essential teaching. If you have this one teaching in the palm of your hand, you have all of the Buddhist teachings you can use. What is it? Great compassion. They will, so what is this one teaching? It is great compassion. They will effortlessly accomplish all aims. So bodhisattvas will effortlessly accomplish all their aims if they have great compassion. In short, great compassion is the root of all the holy Dharma. So we have to think about this. This is a powerful statement. It's a big statement, no? It's a profound statement. So we have to think about, well, is this true? How could that be? That, if bodhisattvas have great compassion, they will effortlessly accomplish all their aims. And that great compassion is the root of all the holy Dharma. Actually, I wanted to, where is it? Because, 1 minute. I'll open up another text. 1 second. I'll just stop share. Actually, I should have. There's a text by Chandrakirti, Entering the Middle Way, that I copy pasted one verse from into the outline. I didn't copy paste the first verse, but now that I'm talking about this sutra quote, I think I should have. And so I'll just share it with you here. Okay, so now I'll go back to Zoom and share my screen again. All right, here we go. Okay, so now look at this first verse. So how is it that all of the Buddhist teachings come from great compassion? So in this verse, so here, I'll just read the verse and then I'll explain. I won't spend too much time on the words of the verse. So this is the first verse from Chandrakirti's commentary on Nagarjuna's root wisdom, right? So Nagarjuna's root wisdom, then Chandrakirti's meaning commentary on that called Entering the Middle Way, translated by Thupten Jinpa. So the first verse says, Shravakas, so it's hearers, and middle level bodhisattvas, means solitary realizers, arise from sovereign sages. That means Buddhas. So there's three levels of enlightenment. The photo called the just mere freedom from samsara of a hearer. A hearer. Let's say a foe destroyer who's a hearer. And then slightly higher than that is a solitary realizer. They also just merely achieve liberation from samsara, nirvana. And then, but much higher than that is a Buddha. So he's saying Shravakas and these two lower levels, Shravakas and solitary realizers, they come from the Buddha, right? So where do they come from? They come from the Buddha. Buddhas, where do Buddhas come from? Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas, right? Every Buddha, before they became a Buddha, they were a bodhisattva. And then where do bodhisattvas come from? It says so I'll just read the words of the verse first and then explain before I simplify. So Shravakas and middle level Buddhas arise from sovereign sages, means Buddhas. Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas. The compassionate mind and noble and non-dual cognition, or wisdom of emptiness, as well as the awakening mind, are the causes of bodhisattvas. So bodhisattvas, where do they come from? They come from three causes. One, the mind of great compassion, which we're talking about. One, the wisdom realizing emptiness. And then three, the mind of bodhicitta, the aspiration to become fully enlightened. So with great compassion, wisdom realizing emptiness, and the aspiration to become fully enlightened, one becomes a bodhisattva, right? So bodhisattvas, but among those, the mind realizing, the wisdom realizing emptiness, if a person has that alone, they're not a bodhisattva, they don't become a Buddha. So even thank you. So even the Shravakas, the foe destroyers who have achieved liberation from samsara, the hearer, what's it called? The hearer photo stories and the solitary realizer photo stories, they have the same wisdom realizing emptiness as a bodhisattva, as a Buddha has. They also have that. But what do they, so, but why didn't they generate a bodhicitta? Why didn't they become a Buddha? Because they're lacking great compassion. It's because of difference in compassion. Because they have less compassion, then they didn't generate the attitude that I see all the sentient beings suffering. I want to do whatever I can to free all sentient beings from suffering. So the main, and so a bodhisattva, the main reason a person becomes a bodhisattva is because they generate bodhicitta, this mind thinking, I must become fully enlightened in order to free all sentient beings from suffering. But where does bodhicitta come from? It comes from compassion, mainly. So it's mainly due to, a person having incredible compassion that, they see how not only they themselves suffer and they want to be free from suffering, but they see that, my brothers and sisters, my mother and father, my friends, my family, my strangers, animals, even the people I dislike, they also suffer. All these other sentient beings are suffering. Their suffering is exactly the same as mine. It's no less important than mine. It's no less painful than my suffering. It's no different from my suffering, and in fact, it's much more in quantity. It's infinitely more. My suffering is just like it's like one drop in the ocean of samsaric suffering. So and then they feel like and who am I in the world? I'm just one person. The well-being of others is so much. The possible well-being of others is so much infinitely greater than mine. And my entire life, everything I have is completely dependent upon all these others. So the only way for my life to be really meaningful is to use it to contribute whatever I can to the world and to the lives of others. So therefore I'm going to do, and I see that others are suffering like me. Therefore I want to free others from suffering. So it's independence upon a person having this altruistic attitude, seeing that others suffer like I do, and I want to use my life to free others from suffering, whether it's from hunger, from sickness, from ignorance, and I give them education, whether it's from poverty, or whether they're suffering from loneliness, whether they're suffering from low self-esteem, or whatever. Then I want to use my life to benefit others, so it's this basic mind seeing that just like I suffer, other sentient beings suffering, and having this powerful compassion, wanting to free other sentient beings from suffering. That's the fundamental cause for bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the fundamental cause for a person becoming a bodhisattva. But a bodhisattva is the main cause for a person becoming an enlightened Buddha. An enlightened Buddha is the source of all the Dharma teachings that exist. Every happiness we experience is a result of the enlightened activity of an enlightened being, right? That last one is very difficult to comprehend, but that's and in one way it can seem like a very biased, self-serving Buddhist assertion, that every happiness that every being experiences comes about independence upon the enlightened mind and the enlightened activity of a Buddha, right? It can seem to be like, oh, that's what the Buddhists say. Of course, the Christians will say, every happiness everyone has is, through the blessing of God. And the Muslims will say it's due to the power of Allah. And the Hindus will say it's because of Brahma, every religion will say that everything that good, it comes about because of my God. But if you think about what a Buddha actually is, okay, forget about the sectarian thing and the name, the Buddhist religion. What is a Buddha? And so here I'm digressing again, but whatever. I think it's important. Is think about. I think for yourself, ask. Before you studied any religion, even, or had any deep understanding of any religion, did you have a sense that there's some kind of force of good in the world, some kind of ethereal, difficult to grasp or describe, but some kind of, I don't know, a sense of just like there is some kind of, I don't know, transcendent force of good in the world that somehow is kind of looking out for things. I don't know. Many people do. I know I did. and many people I know did. So I think it's not an uncommon thing. But 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 then to come back, think about what is a Buddha. A Buddha is when a person they completely eradicate, eliminate every fault from their mind, and they fully develop every positive potential. So they become infinite love, infinite wisdom, without any judgment, without any bias, and their mind is totally unhindered in the way it occupies all of space, which is can you imagine? It's difficult for us to imagine. The mind occupies. There's no place in the world where the mind doesn't exist. It occupies all of space because it's totally unbound by this kind of grasping at a self, which kind of binds our energy to one place, like an atomic center. The mind is totally unbound, and it's like just pure wisdom, pure love, and it continually is active, to benefit beings. When you think about in this vast kind of very pure sort of mind of an enlightened being, then it kind of makes sense, that and this activity, especially the enlightened activity of a Buddha, it's like inconceivable. It's kind of pervades all of space. It's totally non-conceptual, not intentional. It's just spontaneously arising through the force of habituation over countless lifetimes, countless eons to loving kindness, compassion, altruism. Then yeah, I think one starts to be able to imagine how it is possible to conceive of how every virtuous action that any being engages in is somehow influenced by, positively motivated by, positively affected by, supported by, maybe inspired by the sort of sense of, good, right? Yeah, and the omniscient mind of a Buddha is very much related to that. I mean, it's like this all-pervasive kind of force of good in the world. Anyway, so the main point here, though, compassion. All of the Buddha's teachings rise from compassion. So very clearly, because every Buddha arises primarily through the force of compassion, right? Of course, they have to have wisdom too, but without compassion, their wisdom would never manifest as an enlightened being. And then, so all of what they teach all arises from compassion. So back to the other verse. So therefore, if we have compassion as an individual, then if even if we're not very intelligent, even if we're very lazy, even if we're sometimes maybe selfish, even if we're not very religious, we're not very self-disciplined, we don't offer water bowls every day, we don't do prayers every day, if we just practice compassion, when we see another person suffering, if we sincerely empathize with that, we imagine what that person might be experiencing, and we wish to do something to relieve that person from suffering. We see ourselves suffering, and we want to. Naturally, we want to be over it. But if we genuinely practice compassion towards the people that we know, those around us, the people that we encounter, then naturally our positive qualities will increase. Naturally, we won't engage in harming others. Naturally, we'll want to help others. Naturally, other people will feel safe around us, and then they'll support us when we are down. They'll support us, and naturally things will go well in our lives, and naturally we'll become a better and better person, and that will continue, from life to life. And naturally, we'll think of ways, how can I, be of more support to others? How can I help others more? And because of that, we'll grow and develop, as a person, and in our relationships, in our understanding, in our wisdom, in our maturity. And we'll die, if we die with compassion, we die well, we'll go to a good rebirth, and then we'll continue in next life, and from life to life, and before we know it, we'll be fully enlightened, and we'll have all of the qualities of the Buddha in our hands. So I think it's really true when you think about, what does it mean to be compassionate in one moment towards another person? If we're compassionate in one moment, it goes against, our anger. Because compassion, for another person, compassion it's like, well, in a way, it's the opposite of being selfish. All of our attachment, me, I want this, I want that, I like that, I don't like that. All of that comes from being selfish. If we're compassionate towards another person, it takes us out of our self-centered concern for a moment. And so if we're compassionate towards others, naturally, we're not so attached to the things I want, I like, I need. We're not so craving for that time we have compassion. We don't get angry in the time we have compassion. Even if someone's harming us, if we can recognize that that person is upset, they're angry, they're whatever, they're having a bad day, and that's why they're mistreating me. If we can recognize that the reason they're harming me is because they're suffering, or because they don't know any better, they're ignorant, and we can have compassion, then we won't have anger in that moment. I mean, compassion is a really good antidote to anger. When you feel yourself starting to get irritated, fed up, dislike something someone said, and you're thinking to react, to like retaliate with something equally hurtful, instead think about, are they suffering? How, is that person suffering? Like, what is that person feeling? And just switch your mind, it's just switch the mind from one to think, what is that person feeling in that moment? Are they suffering? Do I want them to suffer more? If I retaliate, they're going to suffer more. Do I really want that? And what's that going to bring? That's just going to intensify the whole conflict. What if I just for a moment generate compassion, thinking, how can I relieve their suffering? What can I do to relieve their suffering? Immediately, one's kind of inertia, one's proclivity, like to retaliate with something equally like sharp and hurtful, or equally hurtful, is undermined, is undercut. It's like, that's why they say, I mean, it's such a good analogy, that compassion is like the cooling white light of an autumn moon. I mean, this is from like ancient Indian mythology, but I don't know. I think it's really true. You see that, especially like this time of year after monsoon, when the sky is so beautiful, clear sky. Maybe in Bangalore you can't see so much, but come to Bailakuppe and you see this beautiful clear sky at night, and the full moon, and the white rays, and you just go out on the roof at night, and in the white light of the moon, and it feels like so cool and like kind of soft and relaxing and nice. They say, I guess it was said, when people had fever, then of course in the daytime, if you have a fever and it's hot and the sun is bright, it's very uncomfortable. But then at night, when the air is cool and you go out in the light of the moon, they say the light of the moon cools the fever. But like that, if anger is like a fever, we become irritated, angry. It really is kind of like you start to feel hot and like inflamed. We say inflamed like flames of a fire, but also like, because I recently had a sinus infection, and so when you have a sinus infection, inside it's all kind of hot and burning and uncomfortable. Even just to breathe or to swallow is like uncomfortable, because it's kind of inside it's like infected and irritated, and the what do you say? Like the membrane of the inside the nose and the sinuses is like so sensitive, and anything that touches it just like hurts. So also when we become upset, angry, resentful that someone else is saying this to us, our mind becomes like that. It becomes kind of hot, irritated. Anything that touches it, it's just like, we become so short-tempered and kind of like pissy, in a bad mood, such that whatever one says to us, So, but then in that moment, if we can think about, but the person I'm irritated with, are they suffering? Do I really want them to suffer more? Is there something I can do to reduce their suffering? Then immediately it's like putting cool water on that inflamed hot mind, or the cool light of the moon, cools it. cools it down, and then we can, and softens it, and makes it feel more, makes our own mind feel more comfortable, and also brings us some clarity of wisdom. I mean, it's one of the worst things about afflictive emotions is that when they arise in the mind, not only that they disturb the peace of our mind, but they obscure our ability to think clearly and think wisely. They short circuit our wisdom, and like it's like a fog, haze comes over our mind so that we can't think with the wisdom we have. Even we've been studying, Buddhist teachings, even we've been doing prayers, even we've been to many, teachings by Dalai Lama or someone else. We've read, books about, by as well as Dalai Lama or other, by the Buddha sutras. Even we've heard so much good advice, but in a moment when our mind, when afflictive emotion arises, we become irritated, angry, unhappy, resentful. In that moment, the attitude not only disturbs the peace of our mind, but it makes us forget all that good advice we've heard, and makes us forget to, how to think with wisdom. But then if we can change the mind to have compassion in a moment, it's like it clears the space of the mind, and we can, all of a sudden we can think more clearly, think more, wisely, and think what can I do to what do you say, to de-escalate the conflict, what can I do to sort of instead of, maybe that's the best word I can come up with. Instead of escalating the conflict, to de-escalate the conflict and work towards a resolution. So it's so beneficial, compassion. So in that way, then compassion, it has so many benefits. And you can see why then it says here, Bhagawan, Bodhisattvas should not learn many teachings, It's in a way, it's like saying, being intellectual, knowing a lot of things, having a lot of knowledge is not so important. Bhagawan, if Bodhisattvas grasp and know one teaching, they will have all of the Buddhist teachings in the palm of their hand. What is this one teaching? It is great compassion. They will effortlessly accomplish all aims. In short, great compassion is the root of all the holy Dharma. I mean, this makes me think how also another point Lama Zopa Rinpoche often makes. Lama Zopa Rinpoche is staying at Sarah J Monastery now. He's been teaching, he taught 3 times in the last couple of weeks. So Rinpoche made this point, he's made this point in the monastery, but I remember also several years ago in Chelsea, in Khumbu, Solu, in Nepal. There's Solu Khumbu. No, the upper part is Khumbu, the lower part is called Solu. One day drive from Kathmandu. Rinpoche was staying there once, and he was giving a talk to the local people. It's a very remote villages there. Like many villages and many areas of the Himalayas, probably all over India these days, all the young people have left to go to the capital, Kathmandu. And so in the villages, you just see very old popo momos, very old people, and very young kids that aren't old enough to go study in the city yet. And then a few people in between, but not many. But Rinpoche was asked to give a talk to the local people. And I guess, I think conversion, especially by Christian missionaries, is kind of a big issue there. But so Rinpoche was making a point of saying how incredibly precious, one is to have met the Buddhist teachings and have some faith and have some connection with the Buddhist teachings as opposed to other religions. And one of the reasons, especially the Nalanda tradition, especially in the Tibetan Buddhism, and one of the main reasons is because there's such strong emphasis on compassion. And Rinpoche, but the point I was thinking of here was Rinpoche was making the point that, it's possible one can be, a great scholar, a monk in one of the Densa Sum, one of the great monastic seats, study for years and years, study all the 5 great treaties, all the Kangyur, Tengyur, have heard so many, received so many explanations, be able to debate and explain many, many difficult points. But if one doesn't practice compassion, if one doesn't generate a kind heart in together with that, even if one's a great scholar and can explain all these things and knows so much, can quote all these different words, if one doesn't practice being kind-hearted and compassionate, then it's kind of pointless. It's kind of meaningless. Whereas if there's another person like a villager, in the Himalayas in Nepal or something, and they have hardly studied anything, they don't even know how to write their name. But from the time of being a young child, they learn how to say the Mani mantra, and their parents teach them, don't kill insects, don't harm the birds, don't harm the creatures, don't lie, don't steal, don't harm other people, and they're just a kind-hearted person. And all they know how to do is just, maybe grow potatoes and sit around all day and drink some chang and recite the Mani mantra. But they're just a very kind-hearted person. Then, all their lives they generate so much merit, and they don't harm others. And so at the time of death, there's no question they'll take a good rebirth, where someone can be a great scholar, but independence upon, all their so much knowledge and learning, there's a real danger of generating arrogance and pride, thinking, I know so much, all these other people, they don't know nearly as much, they can't explain nearly as well. And then becoming competitive. And then when other people, you suspect other people malign you, become resentful, and then just go off on a big ego trip and really not be kind-hearted, just kind of use your whole life to try to, generate, a big Dharma center, a big reputation, accumulate wealth, power, influence, name, and not just not really be a very kind-hearted person, harm other people, have this kind of worldly, eight motivation completely polluted by the 8 worldly concerns, and then not be very happy that life, not go to a good future life. Whereas someone who's totally not well learned at all, but they're just kind-hearted, compassionate, don't harm others, try to benefit others, have a simple Dharma practice they do every day. In that life, they're happy. They make, they bring so much joy to people around them, and then they die and go to a good rebirth. So it's kind of reflected here. Bodhisattva should not learn many teachings. You don't need to learn a lot of teachings. The essence is just to be kind, to be compassionate. And then the second verse, yeah. So we're not going to meditate or have question and answer today. I'm just going to talk the whole time about compassion. But whatever, I think it's okay. So the second verse by Chandakirti from Entering the Middle Way, then he says, as compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the harvest of Buddhahood. Right, so this is continuing from the previous verse about, where do the hearer solitary, what is it? The foe destroyers that are hearers and solitary realizers, where did they come from? They come from Buddhas. Where does the Buddhas come from? They come from bodhisattvas. Where do bodhisattvas come from? They've come from compassion. So this is the verse after that. Then Chandakirti says, as compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood. So he's just making that point again, that Buddhahood, the state of this amazing state of full enlightenment, the elimination of every fault, the perfection of all positive qualities, it comes from, if that's like a tree, what is the seed that it comes from? The seed is compassion. Compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood. All right. Or if Buddhahood is like a harvest, like a huge harvest in a field, what are the seeds that great, the reap of that great crop came from compassion. So compassion is like the seed of the harvest of Buddhahood. Also, it is like the water that nourishes it. So just if you plant seeds in a field, not only you need the seeds, but for the seeds to grow, they need to be nourished by water and nutrients. So compassion is also the water that nourishes the seeds of Buddhahood. I'll come back to explain. I'll just read the verse first. The water that nourishes it, and the fruit that is long a source of enjoyment. Therefore, I will praise compassion at the start of all. So, yeah. So this is at the very beginning of this. I mean, this text, Entering the Middle Way, is an amazing text. It goes through the 6 perfections of the main practices of a bodhisattva, but mostly it's about the perfection of wisdom. So mostly it's about how to meditate on emptiness. It's a commentary on Nagarjuna's work, The Root Wisdom. It's brilliant explanation of the essential meaning of the perfection of wisdom sutras by Nagarjuna. But this work by Chandakirti really clarifies Nagarjuna's explanation of emptiness, and also shows how to practice the wisdom of emptiness in combination with practicing generosity, practicing pure morality, practicing patience, practicing meditative concentration, right? And especially practicing compassion. So, but it's interesting, this commentary by Chandrakirti, I mean, in ancient India, at the time Chandrakirti wrote this text, there was always a tradition of making a homage at the beginning of a text. So usually for Vinaya text, usually homage is homage is made to the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, because it's the Buddha who set out all the rules for the pratimoksha vows for the lay people and ordained people. And then at the beginning of texts of the perfection, of the Abhidharma, there's the three pitakas, no? The three baskets of the Buddhist teachings, those on the Vinaya, those on the Abhidharma, and those on the Sutta Pitaka. So those on the Vinaya have to do with the higher training of morality, and the homage of those is primarily made to the Buddha, because the Buddha, again, taught all the rules of the Vinaya, of the vows. And then the Abhidharma Pitaka is mainly to do with the higher training of wisdom. Who's the Bodhisattva of wisdom? Manjushri. So usually at the beginning of those texts, there's a homage paid to Manjushri, as there is at the beginning of Chandrakirti's text. And then the Sutta Pitaka is and those that mainly teach how to generate meditative concentration. Of course, there's many other things, and the homage to those is made, I believe, to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. I believe. Yeah, I think to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But it's interesting that this text by Chandrakirti, it belongs to the Abhidharma Pitaka, so homage is made to Manjushri at the beginning. But it's mostly about wisdom, about emptiness. But instead of praising emptiness at the beginning, Chandrakirti praises compassion at the beginning. No, it's it very stands out that his profound kind of reverence for compassion. So, but just to finish the analogy, and then we'll finish the session. So he compares compassion to the seed of the harvest, the water that nourishes the seeds, and the fruit that is the fruit of the crop that's reaped, which gives enjoyment. Which people eat the crop for a long time. So think, in like the spring in a field, you plant the seeds in the field. Then during the summer, you water them with irrigation or with rain. You water the seeds again, and they gradually grow. And then in the autumn, you have the crop ripens, and you have tons of rice or whatever, sugarcane or corn or whatever you have, or barley. So you have this this crop, and then the fruit of that crop, it sustains you through the entire winter until the following fall. Through an entire year, for a long time, it sustains you. So just like that, you think of the Buddha, the Buddha. So the compassion is like the seeds that if you plant, it results in the state of full enlightenment. Also, but also compassion. So we first generate the seed of compassion, and then it's like we're starting to move towards enlightenment. And then, as we practice the path, as we grow and develop and move, from one realization to higher and higher levels of realization towards enlightenment, the thing that sustains us and continually sustains us and inspires us and motivates us to keep going, when things are rough, when things are very difficult, when we feel kind of overwhelmed or we feel incapable, we feel weak, is compassion. We think about all the other sentient beings suffering. How can I give up? How can I stop if all these other sentient beings are suffering? That I must do something. So compassion is like the water that nourishes us to continue to grow on the path, just like water nourishes the crops in the field to continue to grow. And then compassion is like the crop, is like the fruit that is born. Because think about it, when we become fully enlightened, we have perfected compassion. We have this boundless compassion, and it's through the power of this boundless compassion that the Buddhas have that they continually and spontaneously continually work to benefit countless beings. Like think about if we leave it in an abstract way, it doesn't really touch our minds. So just think about His Holiness the Dalai Lama. all the things he's done through his whole life. His Holiness is now like 87 years old. But think about from when he was like 26, when he first came to India in 1959, not famous, not well known, hasn't done much. Think about all that His Holiness has done, how many people's lives he's touched, Um, it's all through the force of his compassion. So that's like when Chandrakirti says the compassion is like the fruit, then it's like that. At the beginning, you start with compassion. Then during the path, you practice and you're inspired by compassion. Then in the end, when you become a fully enlightened Buddha, it's through the force of compassion, through the force of compassion, that you continually work to benefit beings in a vast and powerful way. Anyway, we're out of time, so we'll dedicate now. So think of whatever merit we've created in this session, and we can rejoice. Thinking again about the importance of having a healthy relationship as a couple. How important couples are in society, how important it is for couples to have good relationships. And then the importance of compassion. Practicing compassion makes us, again, more sensitive to others, less selfish, cools the fire of our own and the inflammation of our own anger, and inspires us to be a better person, right? And to use our lives to benefit others, and brings us closer to enlightenment. And then when we become enlightened, it enables us to to benefit others in a vast and powerful way, like His Holiness does. So we can rejoice in whatever merit we've generated. So through the force of all this merit, then may all sentient beings be free from every form of suffering. So think of all the different kinds of suffering in the world. May they all quickly come to an end. And may all beings have every form of happiness up to full enlightenment. And especially may all the gurus have long and stable lives, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and others. And may the Buddhist teachings flourish. And especially may this center, Choe Khor Sum Ling, continue to flourish far into the future, continually working to accomplish the intentions of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and make the Buddhist teachings available to countless people in Bangalore and beyond. And then bring to mind any other prayers you'd like to make for those who have died or are sick or are in need of prayers. So bring them all to mind. So may all those your prayers also be accomplished in accordance with your wishes. Janjo Samjo Gempo Che Mage Banam Keguji Geba Nyamba Meba Yon. Okay. Thank you, everyone. See you next
Thank you
time. The outlines.
Venerable, I think Madhavji has a question. I saw him raising his hand.
Do you, Madhavji?
Yeah, I had a quick question. I don't know. It's I don't know if it's right what I'm saying. That's why I'm asking you. The Aya Vijnana or Kunshi, will that be cleansed with great compassion? Am I?
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Great compassion is one of the most powerful, minds to purify our mind. So, but the kunshi or alaya vijnana, that's asserted by the mind only school, right? That's not accepted by the what is it, middle way consequentialist school, the Prasangika. So in the
Okay.
highest of the tenet schools, the different tenet schools, in the Tibetan Buddhists assert that the consequentialist middle way school, or the what does it say? The Prasangika school is the highest.
Okay.
They only accept six consciousness, the five sense consciousness and mental sense consciousness.
Okay.
No alaya vijnana.
Oh, only reason I asked you, Venerable, is because I asked a Lama in the Nyingmapa school, and he said that yes, they accept it. So that's why I was confused.
Oh, they
That's why
might.
I
Yeah,
asked.
they might. I don't know about the Nyingma school so much, but they might well. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, that's why I asked you, because I'm getting teachings on Geshe Dorje Drumdrol, but and then I understand that. So I asked the Nyingmapa Lama, and he said yes, they accept it. So I'm like
Okay.
trying to figure it out. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, they might. But whatever the case, it's the same. Compassion, however many, consciousness you accept, compassion purifies them all.
All right, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. I'll have Shanti maybe send out the outlines by email. That's okay, Shanti, no?
Yes, Venerable, I can.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Great. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Lakshmikla.